It's late at night. The road stretches endlessly under a sky blanketed in darkness. The only sounds are the hum of the car's engine and the soft whoosh of tires on the empty highway. The driver, exhausted after a long shift, just wants to get home, get some rest. But then, something catches his eye. A figure stands by the side of the road, bathed in the faint glow of a distant streetlight. A woman, dressed in black. Her silhouette blends with the night, but as he draws nearer, he sees the hint of white fabric. She's a nun. The road is deserted, the church nearby looming in eerie silence. Why would anyone be out here at this hour? His instincts tell him to drive past, to ignore her, but something compels him to slow down. As the car approaches, the nun's eyes meet his through the windshield. Calm, unafraid, almost knowing. Without a word, she opens the door and slips into the car. The silence between them is suffocating, thick enough to almost feel like a physical presence. The driver glances at her in the rearview mirror, trying to make sense of her presence. She's sitting there, eerily still, her hands folded neatly in her lap, her breathing slow and steady, like she's done this before. There's a calmness to her that unsettles him, a quiet confidence that fills the car and makes the space between them feel smaller, more claustrophobic. Her eyes, though, are what really get to him. They aren't desperate or fearful, just calm, too calm. And they seem to be studying him, reading him in a way that makes him feel exposed, like she knows something he doesn't. He shifts uncomfortably in his seat, trying to break the tension, and clears his throat. "Where to, sister?" His voice comes out rougher than he intended, a slight crack betraying his unease. She doesn't answer right away. Instead, her eyes stay fixed on the back of his head, never wavering. It's as though she's looking right through him, or maybe into him. For a moment, the car feels even smaller, the silence even heavier. Then, finally, she speaks. Her voice is smooth, deliberate, and carries a certain weight, as if every word has been carefully chosen, measured. "Drive," she says, the command in her voice so subtle, yet unmistakable. The weight of her words hangs in the air between them, almost like a force that presses down on him, urging him forward. The driver hesitates. There's something about her that makes him feel uneasy. A chill crawls up his spine, but he can't shake the feeling that something is off. Yet, despite his instincts screaming at him to turn around, he presses his foot on the accelerator. The car starts moving again, rolling slowly down the dark, empty highway, but inside the car, the tension is unbearable. She doesn't say anything else. The silence stretches on, thick and oppressive, stretching for what feels like hours, even though it's only been minutes. The road ahead may be endless, but it's nothing compared to the road he's on with her. The nun leans back in the seat, her fingers lightly tracing the edge of her sleeve in slow, deliberate movements. It's an oddly graceful gesture, but there's something unnerving about it. She doesn't sit stiffly, as one might expect from someone raised in a convent, someone bound by rules and discipline. No, she's too relaxed, too comfortable in the car, too in control. The way she holds herself, so at ease, feels all wrong. It's as though she belongs in the shadows rather than the light. The dim glow of the streetlights outside flickers across her face, adding to the eerie calm she exudes, as if the darkness itself is drawn to her presence. The silence between them stretches out, thick and heavy. And then, without warning, her voice breaks through it, soft and low. "Do you believe in secrets?" she asks, her words floating into the air like a challenge. The driver's heart skips a beat. The question catches him off guard, and for a moment, he's not sure how to respond. He glances at her through the rearview mirror, but she's not looking at him. Her gaze is fixed on the passing darkness outside the window, her expression unreadable, almost distant. "Excuse me," he asks, his voice coming out strained, unsure of what to make of the question. The air inside the car feels thicker, the silence hanging even heavier now, as if the space between them is closing in. "Secrets," she repeats, her voice dropping lower now, almost a whisper, as if sharing something intimate, something dangerous. The kind that change everything. The words land with weight, and the atmosphere shifts, as if the car itself is holding its breath. The driver can feel it, a pull, a tension in the air, like the world outside the car has stopped, and it's just the two of them in this strange, charged moment. He doesn't know how to respond, doesn't know what to say. He clears his throat, trying to regain his focus, but her presence, her words, have already thrown him off balance. Before he can gather his thoughts, she leans forward slightly, just enough to shift the balance of the space between them. Her eyes, cold and steady, now fixate on him through the rearview mirror. There's something predatory in her gaze, something unsettling, as though she knows something about him that he doesn't. "Are you afraid of secrets?" she asks, her tone now almost teasing, like she's enjoying this, enjoying the power she holds over the conversation. The question lingers in the air, and it catches him off guard again. Why does it feel so personal? Her words worm their way under his skin, burrowing deeper with each passing second. The driver swallows, trying to steady himself, but the unease in his chest won't go away. He doesn't know how to respond, doesn't know what she wants from him. He finally clears his throat, trying to break the tension. "That depends," he says cautiously, his voice a little rougher than before. "Are you planning to tell me one?" There's a pause, a flicker of a smile crossing the nun's lips. It's not comforting. It's not warm. It's knowing, too knowing. She doesn't have to say anything for him to feel the weight of her awareness, as if she's already read him, already understood him in a way that makes his insides twist. Her smile lingers for a moment longer, and then she leans back in her seat, her fingers still tracing the fabric of her sleeve, her eyes never leaving his in the mirror. The car's engine hums, the road stretches on, but inside, everything feels suspended in time. And as the silence returns, thicker than before, the driver realizes that nothing between them will ever be the same again. The silence between them deepens, thickening as the car glides down the empty highway. The air inside the vehicle feels heavier now, charged with something he can't quite name. The nun shifts slightly in her seat, the soft rustle of her robe the only sound in the otherwise still cabin. Her posture remains calm, relaxed, almost as if she's in complete control of the moment. But her words? Her words are anything but. "I've lived a life of silence," she murmurs, her voice carrying a quiet weight, like an old secret she's just now deciding to share. It's a statement that lingers in the air, hanging between them with the gravity of something untold. She pauses for a moment, her fingers still tracing the edge of her sleeve, almost absent-mindedly, as if lost in thought. "But tell me, driver," she continues, her voice now lower, darker. "Have you ever wondered what happens when a woman like me decides to break the rules?" The words hit him like a physical blow. A shiver runs down his spine, and for the first time since picking her up, he feels truly unsettled. He opens his mouth to speak, to ask her what she means, but no words come out. It's as if the air itself has thickened, pressing against his chest. There's a strange, almost magnetic pull between them now, something that's hard to ignore. He feels the tension rise inside him, like a tightrope pulled too taut, threatening to snap. He wants to ask her, needs to understand what she's talking about, but instead, he finds himself silent, his eyes glued to the road ahead. Something about her, something about the way she carries herself, makes him feel like he's losing control. She's in charge now, somehow, and he's just along for the ride. The unsettling thought should terrify him, but instead, it makes him feel strangely calm, like he's letting go, and for reasons he can't explain, he's okay with it. The hum of the car engine is the only thing steady in the otherwise charged space. He can feel the weight of her presence now, consuming him. It's like she's wrapped herself around him, squeezing out all logic, all reason. Every instinct tells him to keep his distance, to focus on the road, but it's becoming impossible to ignore her. She leans forward slightly, just enough for her breath to warm his neck. The sensation sends a jolt through him, and his heart races, his grip tightening on the wheel. "I shouldn't be here," she admits softly, almost to herself, her voice a whisper in the stillness. "I should be behind those walls, praying." Her words settle into the car's atmosphere, like stones sinking into a pond, rippling through the silence. For a long moment, the only sound is the steady rhythm of the tires on the road. The weight of her confession lingers, and the driver feels as though the air has thickened, like the world outside has faded away, leaving just the two of them in this strange, shared space. "You're here," he says, almost instinctively, the words slipping out before he can stop them. She nods slowly, a deliberate, almost knowing movement. "Yes," she whispers, her voice quiet. but somehow powerful, like a soft current pulling at him. And maybe I'm not as lost as you think. The tension between them grows thicker, like a storm building on the horizon. He can feel it in the air, in the way his pulse quickens, in the way his hands twitch against the steering wheel. The road ahead is dark, endless, but it's the space inside the car that feels impossible to navigate. The nun's gaze flickers toward the window, her eyes following the passing darkness. And for a moment, the driver wonders if she's simply playing a game with him, if he's just another passenger in her strange world of secrets. But then she speaks again, and this time her voice is quieter, almost a whisper. "You've never driven someone like me before, have you?" The words hit him like a punch. His grip on the wheel tightens involuntarily, the leather cold under his fingertips. He doesn't answer her, but deep down, he knows she's right. He's never driven anyone like her before. He's never encountered someone who makes him feel so exposed, so vulnerable. Her presence wraps around him like a dark cloud, and the weight of her words sinks in, deeper than anything he can comprehend. She's not just a passenger. She's not just a nun. She's something else, something dangerous, something he can't name. His heart races, his pulse erratic as the car moves steadily down the highway, the road ahead stretching out into the abyss. But no matter how far they go, he knows this ride will end with a truth he's not sure he's ready to face. The silence between them grows again, thick and heavy, like the calm before a storm. His mind races, but his body feels frozen in place, unable to look away from the reflection of her in the rearview mirror. Every fiber of his being is on edge, yet part of him wonders if he's already given in, already lost in the gravity of her presence. And just as quickly, the words she spoke earlier echo in his mind again, repeating, twisting, sinking deeper. "Have you ever wondered what happens when a woman like me decides to break the rules?" He doesn't know what the answer is, doesn't know if he even wants to know. But for some reason, he can't stop himself from thinking about it, thinking about her, and the pull of something darker, something deeper, that has completely shifted the course of this ride. He keeps driving, the road stretching on, but he knows one thing for certain. Nothing between them will ever be the same again. The silence that follows her question is thick with unspoken words, as though the very air between them has shifted, becoming something heavier, more charged. She shifts slightly in her seat, the movement subtle, but her knee brushes against the back of his chair. It's a small gesture, almost casual, but it sends an electric jolt through him, making his heart skip a beat. His mind races, thoughts tumbling over each other, but one question escapes before he can stop it. "Is that why you left?" he asks, his voice barely a whisper. He doesn't know why he's asking, but something in her, her quiet authority, the way she carries herself with such certainty, has stirred something deep within him. He can't shake the feeling that there's more to her story than she's letting on. She tilts her head, her gaze meeting his in the rearview mirror. There's a moment of silence, a connection that goes beyond words. "I left because I wanted to feel," she says, her voice slow, deliberate, as though each word is carefully chosen. "Do you know what it's like to crave something so deeply, to need it so much that it consumes you? To finally give in and take it?" Her words hit him like a wave, crashing against him, and for a moment, the world outside the car disappears. The tension between them thickens, and it feels like the space inside the vehicle has shrunk, closing in on him. It's more than just attraction. It's darker, deeper, dangerous. The question that hangs in the air is one he knows he has to ask, even though he feels like he's already losing control. "What do you want now?" His voice is barely audible, shaky, but he can't stop himself from asking. Her answer comes so softly it's almost drowned out by the hum of the engine, but it cuts through him with brutal clarity. "Everything." The word lingers in the air, hanging between them like a promise, a temptation. It's not just a word, it's a declaration. It wraps around him, tightening, and for the first time, he realizes that nothing will ever be the same after this ride. The car moves steadily down the road, but inside, everything has changed. The space between them seems to shrink, as if the car itself is closing in around them. Every inch of space feels charged with an electricity he can't escape. He can feel her presence in ways he never expected, her every movement, the subtle brush of her fingers tracing the fabric of her sleeve, the way she leans in just a little closer, as if she's drawing him in without saying a word. "You're quiet," she murmurs, her voice soft but laced with something knowing, something that cuts through the silence. I wonder what you're thinking. His breath catches in his throat, and he exhales sharply, trying to steady the rapid beat of his heart. I don't think I should say, he replies, his voice unsteady, betraying the conflict churning inside him. She smiles faintly, the kind of smile that holds secrets, that teases without revealing. That's the difference between you and me, she says, her voice lowering to a whisper, her words deliberate. I stopped caring about what I should or shouldn't do a long time ago. He feels her reach forward, just the lightest touch of her fingers brushing against his shoulder. The touch is soft, almost ghostly, but it burns through him. His pulse quickens, a fire igniting beneath his skin. The car swerves slightly under the weight of the tension between them, but neither of them acknowledges it. They both know what's happening. The air inside the car is thick with something dangerous, something he can't quite define but can't seem to resist. Her voice drops to a near whisper as she leans in closer, her breath brushing against his ear. Tell me, she murmurs, her lips almost grazing his skin. What happens if you stop fighting it? He's frozen, caught between the instinct to pull away and the overwhelming temptation to let go. He can't answer her, not because he doesn't know, but because he's afraid of the truth that might slip out. His mouth goes dry, and for the first time in what feels like forever, his mind goes completely blank. But the silence between them speaks volumes, and he doesn't need words to know what she means. He doesn't want to fight it anymore. He doesn't want to stop. The car slows as they near the edge of town, the dim streetlights casting long, distorted shadows across the road. Everything outside the car seems distant now, irrelevant. Inside the car, the world has become a single point, focused entirely on the woman sitting next to him. She straightens up in her seat, adjusting her robe as if the moment has passed, as if it were nothing but a passing spark in a dark room. But to him, it's everything. The air still crackles with something unspoken, but she opens the door without hesitation, stepping out into the cool night. The driver watches her, unable to tear his eyes away as she walks away, her black robe swaying with each step. It feels like a dream, like she was never really there at all, yet her presence lingers in the car like a ghost. She turns to face him one last time, her gaze locking with his. You'll remember this, she says softly, her words slipping through the air like a final breath. Even when you don't want to. And just like that, she's gone, vanishing into the misty streets, swallowed by the night, as if she had never existed. The driver is left alone, his heart still pounding in his chest. He stares ahead at the empty road, the night swallowing everything around him. His mind is racing, reeling from the encounter, but one thing is clear. Nothing will ever be the same again.